church which is proving to be both salt and light in its location, impacting the culture of the community.
What is the culture of the kingdom? If we're looking to see the values of the kingdom of God more and more take root in the culture, what are those values? What would kingdom culture look like?
I think that some nations, and England would be one of those that's been blessed in that way, that there has been such a development of gospel presence that it has affected even those who are not saved. So that my parents, for instance, who did not become Christian till they were very old, actually still had their values affected when church was much more vigorous than it's been in recent decades. So their values, I never heard my parents swear at one another. I never saw my father get drunk. I never, those things, somehow, I think the effects of church life had affected them. There were Christian influences around, though they never embraced the gospel and were very frightened when I became religious. Yet somehow there was influence, and I think that happens. There is a restraining of evil. There is that effect of salt and light. It goes beyond the church, and I think that's part of what we're meant to be and do.
So there's a halting of moral decay. In a sense, there's a kind of pushing up of the standards of morality in the culture. Now, does that mean that that's our overarching concern, or that we are aiming ultimately for just a juster, fairer, better society? Is that our main thing?
It certainly isn't our main thing. I don't think so. I think it's an offshoot of gospel advance, and I think it's very important that we don't miss the point, or we'll get very disappointed. But nevertheless, church history would demonstrate that where the gospel is successful and moral awareness changes, then often the law changes. It's interesting, you cannot legislate for morality. You can't do it. If the moral climate is going down, you will not be able to change it by changing the law up. The law will reflect where people are going. What you can do is see God moving, culture changing, conscience changing. Then, as with Wilberforce, you can say, right, and we should change the law, and there becomes acceptance when there's a willingness in the nation. Similarly today with the downhill drift, laws are being changed all the time to make evil easier. It's no longer illegal to do things that used to be illegal, and so the law only follows what people want, and it can only carry, especially in democracy, what people are willing to embrace. And so you can't legislate for morality, but once you've seen an awakening, you can put stakes in the ground that say, right, that is the standard we live by, and there'll be acceptance of that.
So you say, in a sense, this kingdom influence on the culture is kind of an offshoot of our getting on with planting churches, preaching the gospel. Does that mean that it happens automatically? Is there to be an intentional pursuit of it?
I think that it won't happen automatically, as you put it, unless people begin to become involved and give their energies in the way that, if you like, Wilberforce did, and other industrialists. I used to work at the Charity Commission. It was fascinating to get insight into some of the large charities that were established in this country in previous centuries, most of them rooted in men of Christian value, Christian families very often, like Cadbury, who lived with a real fear of God and considered the working conditions of the people that they looked after. They did housing developments, social practices. It was great to work for these Christian men. And so they took action. And I was fascinated, working as I did, to see original trust deeds and so on, to see, and also how those things can linger on through the passing decades and centuries, what good things were built into society and have lingered on through charity work and through working beyond simply building church life.
So there's some great examples of real heroes in the past who have helped to affect a broad chunk of society through what they've done. What about your kind of average Christian who may not feel that they have quite the kind of social clout but would want to help bring in the kingdom? How does that happen? How can we be salt and light in our workplaces?
Yes, the way we conduct ourselves in the workplace, the way we're not given to gossip, We're not given to sexist remarks. You know, there's respect, there's that sort of thing. I think it's important that we are, in our own little circle of contact, we're having that impact, probably unselfconsciously, quite a lot.
So would you say that every Christian can be an agent of bringing in the kingdom of God without?
I think every Christian can be salt and light, and if you like, bringing in the kingdom.